Yes, we just finished the day. Just to clarify, I'm in blue because these are our brand colors, and that this has nothing to do with Chelsea. Today the main issue I wanted to discuss or talk about is precast concrete 30% cheaper than conventional construction method? And for those who don't understand, precast concrete refers to concrete that is cast off-site. This is concrete that is made in a factory setup and allowed to set, then it is carried to site. It might be beams, they may be columns, and any other component of the building, probably panels for the walling. So that is what precast concrete refers to. So when we talk of conventional construction method, this is also referred to as traditional construction methods. It basically involves brick and mortar and cast in place concrete, or in other terms we refer to it as cast in situ. So this is concrete that is prepared on site and poured while wet, or it can be brought in by those dealing in ready mix concrete and poured. I believe you've seen them around. So that explains that term. So traditional construction technique has been used for so long in Kenya, and most structures in the country are actually built using the traditional construction technique. Even in the rural setup, most structures. But in the recent past, we've had people shifting. There are new methods of construction, and it's good to embrace them. We have precast concrete technique. We also have the use of containers, where you take a shipping container and convert it into a house via fabrication and finishing. Interior, where you do the insulation bit and you finish the interior parts using the gypsum. I've been fortunate enough to be involved in all these construction techniques, and now I'm talking from a point of knowledge. My background in QS, also in quantity surveying, has also assisted me when it comes to costing and cost comparison for all these techniques. And I've seen people argue on platforms, majorly on X platform. I've seen people argue that precast concrete is not as cheap as it is being portrayed to. And somehow they are right, but this is debatable, and that is why I want to debate or to weigh in on this matter. Everybody has an opinion, and it's always good to back your opinion with facts, because facts are stubborn, as they say. And the truth of the matter is, however complex construction can be, there are things, there are evidence-based arguments. So precast concrete and conventional, what precast concrete technique normally replaces when it comes to construction is the foundation, the walling, and in the case of flat roof slab, and the flat roof slab. In the event you're using the pitch roof, where you're using the timber and iron sheets, decra, etc., the price of the roofing will almost be the same, because there will hardly be any change if you were to go by the same design for both precast and conventional. So for those who have been involved in construction and costing, you agreed with me that for a standard structure, the finishing bit of the project and the structure part of the project almost compete in percentage, and you will realize that they are almost 50-50 the cost of construction for a standard structure. I'm saying for a standard structure because there are cases where the client goes for premium finishing, and when a client uses or a project goes for premium finishing, you will find the cost of finishing or the cost of the finishes will be 60+ % of the total project cost, because for instance, you are importing fixtures and fittings, you are importing tile work, and you are using everything high end, the paint works, the techniques you're using to do each and every item is high end, probably for a resort or a 5-star hotel, or probably a house for somebody who has enough finances. Then in that case you'll realize that the finishing bit of the project will take a huge chunk of the construction project cost. That said, we now go back to precast. In a case where you are using the precast panels to do the foundation, you will still be required to do the excavation. In some cases, there are people who still do backfill. There are those who don't do backfill and use the beam and block for that is suspended slab. So there are techniques that have to be maintained when it comes to waterproofing the slab, when it comes to finishing, probably insecticide treatment. Those are things that have to be maintained. So if you look at the rate for the precast components that are used in the foundation, and then you do a comparison with those that are used in the conventional construction method, you realize there is close to negligible, or the cost, the margin is negligible. I say this because as a contractor, I've had instances where I'd wish to use precast concrete for my client's projects, and I'd had to do a cost comparison for the two, and in some cases I've shifted back to the conventional construction technique, because precast comes in with transportation costs for the panels. You purchase the panels, be it per square meter, then you add the transport costs, then you add the installation cost. Then for conventional, most materials are found locally. So all this put together are what sums up your foundation. you realize the foundation will almost range in the same margin for both. You go back to walling. The cost of doing a wall, brick and mortar, that is the traditional technique, and the cost for buying or purchasing the precast panel and then transporting it to site and installing per square meter. Also, that has close to negligible margin. And the same applies to the slab technique. So there are certain advantages that precast construction technique has, and one of them is that in the event your project is repetitive, probably you are doing several units, let's say for a developer doing 12 units, in that case you might end up choosing precast may be advantageous, and probably to some extent it may save you some cost, because for a repetitive work you will do all these things in a factory setting, transport them and get a crane to install them at a go for all those units. That in itself will save some cost. Or for a structure that has probably an apartment that has a typical floors, so in that case also there is repetitiveness, and also the economies of scale comes in. So at that point the costs that would be brought about by the transport costs, probably the crane and machinery that are going to be used to install the panels, would be overtaken by the economies of scale. The fact that you're going to buy so many components or panels at a go, and you're going to install them all at once. But for somebody doing a single residential house, probably a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom, I do tell my clients that the cost is close to negligible. It's not significant at all. So it's upon them to choose which technique they are going to go with. But in terms of saving on costs, that should not guide you choosing precast for your own house or individual residence. Precast is also fast. If you want to do your project, or you are short of time, probably you are a client from abroad and you want your house to be done before you leave the country, for that precast will be ideal, because it will give you a fast turnaround time for your project, and within no time you will finish. It doesn't have the waiting period that comes in with the conventional, where you have to give the slab probably 21 to 28 days before you can remove the formwork. It doesn't have that. For in case you want to finish your project faster, then precast is the way to go. So those are the factors that need to guide you choosing precast concrete. But for your project, your individual house, cost saving with precast is a no, because you're only replacing the components that I've mentioned: foundation, walling, and probably the slab. So when it comes to your individual house, precast concrete won't save you much of a significant cost. So the factors you need to consider are the ones I've mentioned earlier. Do you want your project to be done within a record time? Do you have a number of units that you're doing? In that case, precast will be ideal, and it will, because now economies of scale comes in and plays its part, and that will be ideal. Again, let me mention this. If you want to save costs in doing your house or project, then the first thing you have to get right is the team that will take part in your project. So the project team plays a major role, because project management is what saves you cost. If you manage your project properly, then you will hardly experience cost overruns, because that is what normally ails so many projects. You do a budget, you draft one, you sign the contracts with your project team, they get on the ground, 3/4 of your project done. Then you're told the cost cannot finish your project. Probably we underquoted, or so many stories comes in, and you end up overspending on your project. That messes up your budget, because the moment you're given a budget of 10 million and then later you're told your project will cost 13 million, probably you had already invested 3 million elsewhere, and you have to bring it back to the project. And apart from that being stressful and disappointing, it also messes up your project big time. Probably you might choose not to go ahead with the team you had and bring in new guys, so you're shifting people. Those who started the project are not the ones finishing, and in the long run, so many things come in play, because they are the earlier guys are the ones with the know-how on how things were done, how are the services done, and those are things that you don't really need to be putting a number of hands in. So the ideal situation for somebody who wants to save cost, just ensure you have the right design team, ensure you have the right execution team. Now your design team will come in handy by giving you a design that is specific to the factors that they find out during the site visit. So how is the slope and the gradient of your site, the soil type? So this will inform the architect on what kind of design can fit in this land, and it will also inform the structural engineer on the structural design that is suitable for such a structure. Then now you get to the construction part or the execution part, and the team you get there also does a good execution. They ensure that your project is properly managed, and there is no material privileges, there is no cost overrun, there is no time lapse beyond the period that had been set, and you'll be at peace. You'll not go regretting and saying, oh, I'm never going to construct again in this country. Because I've had people say that. I've had my clients who have had bad experiences with the project team that they had before, and it's really a thing that stresses you up. But then also, that is the nature of the industry. So just ensure you get the right team, you get the right people in place to execute your project, and then when all is done and said, everybody will go home happy. I wish you all the best for those who are working to construct this year. I know you are still torn on ideas, you don't know what technique to use. You can share your thoughts. For those who have done it before, who have used precast concrete before, you can share your thoughts so that those who are also looking towards using the same technique may also get some insight from the experience you had with it. But all these techniques have their advantages. Soon we will be talking on the container homes and its advantages, because all these techniques, each and every technique has its advantage and disadvantage. So you just have to sit down and compare and make a decision based on the facts on the ground.